certainly it turned out to be so. We had of course, we went through the design of a trajectory for the traveling beyond the Earth's gravitational field, and then how to reach the moon. Also have a deep space tracking network which can keep in contact with the spacecraft and so on. So all those development took place in the 2005 to 2008 timeframe, and 2008, in the first attempt itself, we are fortunate to have arrived at the moon very precisely and placed our Chandrayaan-1 in a lunar orbit. And there, of course, it was a circular orbit going around, and we had a host of instruments from Indian scientists as well as from the international community, which has really mapped the almost entire surface of the moon and have a lot of information about the surface features, mineralogical content, and ultimately we were able to confirm the presence of water on the moon and so on. So this was a starting point. Of course, later then we wanted to have a confirmation about the remote sensing data. In situ measurement is important. That is how the Chandrayaan-2 was conceived, where there will be a set of instruments landing on the surface of the moon, picking up samples, analyzing, sending it back. And of course, as you know, Chandrayaan-2 did not succeed fully. Now the Chandrayaan-3 is an opportunity to prove that we can safely land on another planet.
Before I come to Chandrayaan-3, Dr. Nair, let me also take our viewers through one very interesting fact with regards to Chandrayaan-1, when you were the chairman of ISRO. At that point in time, when Chandrayaan-1 was launched, 60% of the lunar missions by that time used to end in failure. But despite that, you and your team decided to go ahead with Chandrayaan-1, and of course that perhaps the intervention that was made by former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, where he said that how do you really prove that we had gone to the moon? And that's when a different object was altogether added to this Chandrayaan-1. I want to understand this, despite the failure rate being so very high at that point in time, how did you all actually overcome that? And Chandrayaan-1 became not only a successful mission, but lauded by across the globe, and of course led to the discovery of ice molecules too.
Well, certainly ISRO always looks for challenges. And as you rightly pointed out, the lunar missions were not that successful in the past. Several advanced countries have failures in their history. So we really took it very seriously. Our mission team at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center did elaborate the computation as to the trajectory between Earth and the moon, and also what is the optimum time for such an event, and what type of launch vehicle has to be used, and so on. More than that, I think, as you rightly pointed out, after going there, we wanted to see that our flag is deposited on the surface of the moon. So that is how the suggestion from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, then President, to have the moon impact probe. So that also was realized. Now, how we achieved this was here concentrated efforts and cautious approach. We have normally the people go from Earth to moon in a single shot. Russians, they do that quite often. And Americans, of course, go around the Earth, and then from there they take off. So we thought that it is better to first understand what happens when we go to higher altitudes from the Earth's surface. So we have gone to elliptical orbits, reaching up to something like 1.7 lakhs kilometers. And from there, we try to calibrate the differences which may cross the trajectory. So this cautious approach has resulted in a precise targeting and also the instrumentation on board the Chandrayaan spacecraft, as well as the deep space tracking network. What we have established at Bangalore has helped in steering it accurately. And finally, we were happy that we arrived at the moon within a pillbox of 10 kilometers. So this was a great achievement for any country. It is simply because we didn't know anything about it. So we took a cautious approach, went on calibrating at every moment, and then trying to see what we done next, etc. The real-time corrections have helped us in achieving the lunar orbit in the first attempt itself. Then, of course, on the instruments, Indian scientists have come forward with half a dozen instruments, but then we could find a little bit of spare capacity, and I used that opportunity to rope in some international cooperation.